if you take one thing away from listening to these podcasts, understanding that detachment is a superpower in any dynamic situation will be game changer.
Chaos breeds chaos. And if you're a chaotic leader and you're not detached and you're making emotional decisions, the people around you are likely to react in the same way.
You call 911. You need to think about, okay, what information do they need from me?
The emotion, the ego, our own perspective, those are quick reactions. So how do I build this skill of detachment?
This idea that detachment is a superpower is a really, really powerful concept. And it wasn't something that, when Jocko and I wrote Extreme Ownership, we talked about prioritize and execute. In order to properly prioritize and execute, you have to pull yourself back from the details, analyze the situation, and then all of a sudden the picture becomes clear. You can see what the priorities are. So we talked about detaching, but I don't think we talked about the power of detachment in a way that we now describe it, because I think we understand so much more now why detachment is a superpower. Because when you're down in the details, when you're in the weeds on something, it becomes very hard to see what you should do, where you should go, what's most important strategically. When you pull yourself back from the details, that becomes really, really clear. And I think this is a concept that is, if you take one thing away from listening to these podcasts, understanding that detachment is a superpower and working toward being able to do that in a high pressure situation, in any dynamic situation, will be game changer.
And it's evolved over time. When you guys first started talking about detachment in the book, Extreme Ownership, it was about detaching from your emotions, which I think is the first thing that we have to detach from. But I love how it's evolved over time to include our ego and our perspective. So when we talk about detaching, we have these chaotic things going on, problems arise. The first thing we have to do as a leader, in order to make good decisions, to help us actually put something in place to solve that problem, we have to detach. And that includes detaching from the emotions that we're dealing with in that moment, detaching from our ego that typically is, shielding our view of the truth of the situation. And I love this part about detaching from our perspective and recognizing that we don't have a full picture if we don't have the perspective of others. When those things arise, we have to first be able to detach from our emotions, our ego, and our own perspective so we can see more clearly the problem at hand and potential options for solving that problem.
It really is a superpower, and it's something that just being aware that you actually have to detach, I think is a great start there. We taught in the SEAL teams, just being in a high pressure situation, it's so easy to get overwhelmed because it's chaotic. Combat is very chaotic. It's very difficult. You don't have all the answers. You might all of a sudden you're taking fire on a patrol. You don't know if it's 8 bad guys shooting at you. You don't know if it's 80 bad guys shooting at you. And so you're probably not even sure where they are. There's a lot of things that you have to figure out. And so that could be pretty overwhelming. And so how we taught our leaders to deal with that problem is to relax, look around, and make a call. Relax, number one, is just take a breath and calm yourself down, because when you're getting emotional about things, you don't make good decisions. None of us do. When we start getting emotional, that affects our decision making, and that if you're getting emotional, you're probably going to make the wrong decision. So you got to take a breath, calm yourself down, and don't get emotional, number one. 2, then you got to look around. This is detachment, pulling yourself back from the details. And when you're in the middle of a gunfight on the battlefield, if you're looking down the sights of your weapon, all you can see is that your whole world is that cardboard paper towel dispenser tube. That's all you can see. So it's very difficult to figure out what the strategic priorities are. You get really target fixated. And so what you have to do is pull yourself back. So instead of looking down the sights of your weapon, if you're in a leadership position, what you should be doing is coming off your weapon at the earliest possible opportunity, point your gun to the sky, looking to the left, looking to the right, and all of a sudden the strategic picture becomes clear. You can make the call, get the team executing on the highest priority task. And this power of detachment, so it works if you're down in the details of something. When you pull yourself back, all of a sudden that picture becomes clear. And when I was running training, I realized when I was going through training, I would have instructors that are standing right behind me when you get a chance to be an instructor going through training and you see a SEAL platoon or you see a bunch of junior officers, like I was putting them through this leadership course, and they're out in a field training exercise environment, you're putting them into some high pressure situations. When you step back, you can see everything that's happening. They're down in the problem and they can't see anything, and they're getting overwhelmed and they're spinning up on stuff and they're not reacting to new threats or new developments. And it's so frustrating, and you realize, like, why can't they see it? Because from where I would be standing, I would literally be 3 feet away from them and maybe 2 feet higher, and yet I could see everything. And they're down in the details of the problem. So that's all it really takes for detachment, is just to pull yourself back from the details. You be in that position where you're observing, where you're looking around, and that enables you to think strategically about where you need to go.
And the ability to detach is a skill. I think that's what's interesting for people, because people are like, well, that's something that comes natural, but I don't think that's true. I think your ability to detach in those moments comes from practicing them leading into those situations. And I saw this play out in my life because I've been here at Echelon Front. We teach this principle of detachment in order to make good decisions. So I get an opportunity to practice it all the time. And there's all these practical things we can do to help us get better at detaching. And when you do it in the small ways that don't really matter, you're more prepared in the moments where it really does. And a couple years ago, I know you remember this, Flynn, my husband, for all of his exploits in the SEAL teams and jumping out of planes and doing all sorts of cool stuff and never having been hurt, was moving a mirror, just a simple mirror, stepped off the back of the truck. The mirror hit the tailgate, shattered, and a piece of glass came down and went through his wrist, essentially. Ended up severing 4 tendons, a major artery, multiple nerves. But in that moment, I was standing there with my kids and his friend, and this happens. And all I can see in that moment is shattered glass everywhere and blood.
And just to describe this, I did not fully appreciate that until you sent me a picture of it. And when you sent me a picture of that, you could have taken a chainsaw to Flynn's arm and done less damage. It was horrific.
Don't underestimate glass. It was not for the faint of heart. I didn't even know, what's interesting is I didn't know how bad it was either. Talk about detachment. Flynn had practiced this as well in the SEAL teams. He was calm despite understanding the severity of the situation. And he immediately covered the wound and he knelt down very calmly and he just said, "This is bad." And I had no idea what we were dealing with. I didn't see it until later either. And I know when I sent you guys a picture, it was like, it looked like a Halloween prop. I just remember him kneeling down, covering his wrist, letting me know that this is bad. And everything in me in that moment wants to spiral out of control. My kids I'm trying to figure out how my kids feel. Are they okay? Did anyone else get hurt? And I've got my husband who's acting calm, but I knew that something was really bad here, that we're in a dire situation. And everything in me wanted to get emotional. And I knew that wasn't going to help us solve the problem. And so thankfully, because I had practiced these things and I had built up the skill to detach, I was able in that moment to detach and make decisions. We need a tourniquet. We need to get him to a hospital. We can't wait for the ambulance. I need to get someone to pick up my kids. I need to put pressure on the wound and be prepared if he goes into shock in the car. All those things were little decisions I was able to make because I was setting my emotions in the moment aside in order to look at the situation and say, okay, what do we need to do next to help and solve this problem? We were thankfully able to get him to the hospital moments before he went into shock. And he likely would have, if I had not been able to detach in that moment, he likely would have bled out there in the driveway. So I remember that situation and recognizing and being so grateful that I had been practicing the skill of detaching long before that. So when the moment came, I could actually use it in a very chaotic and stressful situation.
That was a horrible situation. And thank God Flynn's okay and has made a full recovery. But that could have easily been fatal. He could have easily bled out. He could have easily lost his hand, and it could have been absolutely catastrophic as a result of that. And it's a real example of the power of detachment. And even if you may never have to deal with a serious injury, you may never be in a combat situation, but if you anything that you're doing in life, when you get sucked down in the details, when you start getting emotional, when you feel the pressure ramping up because, things aren't going according to the timeline, it's real easy to get overwhelmed. And so it's an opportunity to practice it. As you said, it's not innate to most of us. I get spun up pretty easily by nature. I think there's only probably 2 people in the 13 years that I spent in the Navy and the 9 years in the SEAL teams. I think there's 2 people that I can recall who are incredibly calm and would kind of talk in a rather monotone voice, even with bullets flying around and people wounded and all kinds of horrific, dire things. They could just talk on the radio just like this. And they were just kind of naturally like that. Almost none of us are like that. So the rest of us, we had to train to be able to do that. And you have to realize that that's what you need. If you ever have a major emergency situation like you did, and we may come up against that, you may come up against that in your life, you call 911. You need to think about, okay, what information do they need from me? You have to be able to say that in a very calm manner so they can understand, what the information is they need so they can get to you. If you get spun up and you start screaming and yelling into the phone, they can't hear you. They can't get the information. They can't actually come and help. So embrace the opportunities that life gives you to when things are chaotic, when things are difficult. I have 3 young kids at home. There's a lot of chaos. I have a dog. There's a lot of chaos.
A lot of opportunities to practice.
Tons of opportunities to practice. And so you have to embrace that. And when I find myself getting spun up, I found myself getting emotional or getting frustrated because my kids aren't getting ready and they're not getting in the car and we're not getting out to the door to school on time. It's an opportunity to be able to relax, look around, make a call, practice the skill of attachment, and it will help you in the more dynamic and difficult situations.
I obviously gave an extreme example with an emergency situation, but I see this play out all the time. And I saw this a couple months ago. I was in the orthodontist office and this teenager comes out and he tells his mom he's going to get red and yellow rubber bands on his braces. And the mom reacts. He's a Chiefs fan. He loves the Chiefs. He's very excited. And she's like, no. You are not getting these braces. You're going to look like an idiot. And she's pushing back and he's getting more upset. These are my braces. I'm the one that have to deal with them, whatever. But they're arguing and they're having this moment. She's not detached, certainly not from emotions and definitely not from her own ego, because that's what was ultimately preventing her from just saying, yeah, go ahead and get the braces. In the end, she puts her foot down. You're getting blue. And he storms off. And she sits there. And she's not talking to anyone. She's not particularly talking to me, but she says kind of out loud in this waiting room, I don't know why I care. And you could feel now that after the moment had settled, she was now detaching and recognizing, like, I don't know why I care. I don't know why I just put myself and my son in this frictional situation and put my foot down, because who really cares? And that was her moment of detaching, unfortunately, too far after the moment. But those are small situations where we can detach, where we can recognize what is causing me to react this way. It's my own ego, my own emotions, or my own perspective that's preventing me from solving this problem, taking a step back and recognizing, is this the end of the world? It probably isn't. Those are the things that people need to work at practicing detachment in those small moments that will help us avoid creating friction within our relationships.
And that's a good example, too, of really, from a detached perspective, you can really think about, what does winning look like? What does winning look like in that situation? It might be, he might get embarrassed and decide that he doesn't like red and yellow braces at some point in the not too distant future. But your relationship with your child is more important, right? And if he's going through, this is something that he wants to do, it means, it means a bunch to him. Then what winning looks like in my mind, we're like, sure, go for it. No big deal. I mean, unless there's some reason, that there's added cost or some issue. I think this is one of those opportunities where you can let your kids brush up against the guardrails of failure.
I think the question for a lot of people is, how do I actually detach in the moment? Because oftentimes the emotion, the ego, our own perspective, those are quick reactions. So how do I build this skill of detachment? And we teach people there's a couple different ways. And first of all, you have to recognize for yourself what your own red flags are, the things that indicate to you that something is wrong. And we're not saying emotions are a bad thing. Emotions tell us, hey, there's something here you need to focus on, something you need to prioritize. They're a good indicator that something's going on. But we don't make good decisions when we're emotional. So we have to recognize those red flags, those things that are telling us, hey, something's going on here. You're starting to get emotional. You're starting to, your ego is starting to get involved in this situation. And then we have to have an action plan for what we're going to do in those moments so that we can be prepared when they happen to detach. That could be taking a breath. That could be taking a step back. That could be physically removing ourselves from the situation. I use this all the time as a tactic with my teenager. Hey, let's talk about this tomorrow. Or let's come back to this in an hour. When I feel myself getting emotional, realizing that having this conversation in that state, making a decision in that state is not a good thing. I need to take a moment and give myself the opportunity to detach so that I can recognize what we need to do as a team and figure out, without those emotions involved, what the next step is towards solving this problem.
If you realize what those red flags are, right, then you can start to recognize in yourself when you are getting emotional, right? It might be your heart rate's going up. It might be you're starting to breathe heavy. It might be your face turns red, or you start to, flex your hands, or the hair on the back of your neck stands up. Those things these red flags within us, we realize, I'm getting emotional about this. I'm getting angry. I'm getting frustrated. And I think when you recognize those in yourself, then you can start to counter it. If you know what those red flags are, I'm somebody that gets spun up pretty easily about things. So then you can also realize when they happen, you could go into a situation contingency planning. This is one of the ways that we prioritize and execute on the battlefield is, before we're going out on a patrol, before the bullets are actually flying around, when we're back in the mission planning space, if we think about the things that might go wrong and we prepare for what to do in the event that those things happen, it's much easier to actually make that call when you're under pressure and under fire. So if I know that we're going to go out on a patrol, we're going to take some enemy, if we might take some enemy fire, I'm looking at the maps. I could say, hey, there's a big building here with some concrete walls. We'll fall back to this building if we take enemy contact, and we'll strong point that building. We'll take the rooftop, then we can access from there. Now, when that happens and it's chaotic and it's difficult, I know exactly what to do, and we can make that happen. It's the same thing too. If you and I, have had some frictions. Let's say we're peers at a company where we work, and, we've been fighting over resources, or, competing over resources, I guess would be a better term. But there's been some frictions between our two departments, and I know that I might get a little emotional, and I know that, you've said some things that kind of got under my skin in the last meeting. Well, then I should write down some contingencies to think about ways, okay, I'm not going to allow myself to get emotional. If Jamie says something that I feel like sets me off, I'm going to just deflect. I'm going to relax. I'm going to look around. I'm going to make the call. I'm going to try to de-escalate the situation so that we can move forward in a positive direction to be able to solve this problem together so our whole team can win. And if I'm doing that, I'm thinking about those contingencies, I'm going to be a lot more prepared to handle it. And then we can debrief. After I come out of that meeting, I could debrief for myself and think, okay, how did I do? Did I do well? Did I do not as well as I should have? What can I do to adjust going forward to fix it?
I actually recently did this with my daughter. Her 5th grade classes got combined. And so instead of having 2 classes of 16, they were now combined into 1 class for a short amount of time, a couple weeks. But that's stressful for a kid. There's a lot of kids now. She's one of those kids that likes to be focused. She doesn't like when a bunch of people are talking and all the chaos. And so she was coming home and she was emotional. And she knew she was emotional. She didn't really know how to control it. And so we walked through that same effort. Okay, cool. Let's figure out how to indicate or how to know when you're feeling that way. And then let's have an action plan. So she took a whiteboard marker and put on her mirror, like this 3-step action plan. So she was ready. She had that contingency plan ready to go. And so she wrote down, take a break. And we decided that taking a break wasn't video games. It was reading or taking a nap or something to help calm her down. The second one was eat a snack, which I thought was pretty genius because I always feel better when I eat a snack. And then the third one was jump on the trampoline. And she thought, okay, if I could do those 3 things, I take a little break, I eat a snack, I go jump on the trampoline. And the reality is every time she's had to put that action plan in place, she feels better. She gets done with going through her action plan and she can control her emotions. She feels better. That in and of itself gave her the room to detach from the emotion that she was feeling. So she wasn't creating this stress at home that didn't need to be there. So it works with our 11-year-olds. It also works in combat, as you just described. And it works in business with relationships that we have. If we understand what those red flags are and we have a plan in place for how we're going to attach in those moments.
Yeah, I think that requires detachment. Like if you're not detached, then you're not ever going to know that. Like, oh, I came up with a plan. Jamie says, I don't like that plan. We should go with my plan because my plan's better. And I'm instantly like, what are you talking about? I have more experience than Jamie. I'm smarter than her. I know better. My plan's way better. How come she can't just see the genius of my plan? And if I don't detach from that situation to consider, wait, well, Jamie's a smart person. Jamie has experience. Jamie wants us to be successful. And she wants to do it differently than I want to do it. If I can put my ego in check, just detach just for a second, take a breath, calm down, not get emotional in my response and just be like, interesting, why do you think that, Jamie? And now all of a sudden I can hear what your perspective is. You may be right. You may have a way better plan than I have, which would give our team a better chance of success, which ultimately is what winning looks like, right? For our team, we want our team to be as successful as possible. So I think know that your ego is going to immediately react to things. The moment that someone pushes back on you, the moment that someone criticizes you, the moment that someone disagrees with you. And so that's where I think it requires us, instead of immediately blurting out or immediately getting defensive, relax, take a breath, calm yourself down, then look around, right? Pull yourself back, detach perspective, think, okay, if Jamie is seeing the world differently than I see the world, what am I missing? She might be right. I might be wrong. Let me actually hear what she has to say. And if you could do that and listen, then you're going to be able to actually evaluate that. And then you could properly prioritize and execute on the highest priority plan. Take advantage of a plan if you have a better idea than I do. So I think if you just default and have a contingency plan in place to know that your ego is going to get involved, and if you're instantly feeling defensive, if you're instantly feeling pushback, that is your ego talking. It's not probably your ego, right? It's, as so many people say, oh, it's probably my ego here. It is absolutely your ego.
Every time.
So know that that's an issue. And just before you blurt something out, before you get defensive, take a breath, give it a pause, detach, and then you can make an evaluate, see that person's perspective, maybe ask some questions to let them share that perspective with you.
Yeah, the example we give a lot is when you get that email and your response is to reply all, see answers in red, all caps.
CC all, and you're typing with one finger on each hand.
And then the detachment is you take your hands off the computer, you go for a walk, you get a cup of coffee, you come back and you realize this is not going to have the outcome that I'm looking for. This is going to create additional problems. It's going to create friction and it's not going to solve the problem. So we put that away and we re-engage on a detached approach to solving this problem. That's where extreme ownership for me comes into play as it relates to detachment, because it's taking ownership of what we can actually control. And we can't control other people. We can't control their emotions or their ego. We can only control our own. So detachment is about recognizing and taking ownership for what can we control in the situation. And taking ownership of detaching from our emotions and our ego and our perspective is the only path to actually finding a solution when those problems arise.
And if you want an example of why detachment is a superpower, think about someone, we've all seen people in high pressure situations, whether it's, an emotional outburst at home, right, with your kids or your spouse, whether it's a disagreement with someone in your community, whether it's something at work when people are under pressure and things aren't going well. When you see someone who flips out, who loses control of their emotions, who gets angry and starts screaming, yelling at people, are just has a meltdown and loses focus on what's actually most important. Does your respect level for them increase? It does not. Does your admiration for them increase? Does your ability to want to follow them and take the lead on what they're asking you to do? That does not improve at all. So think about the opposite of this. We've also all seen people who, even in the midst of an emotional outburst or some issue with kids or spouse at home, in the community, a disagreement at work, under pressure, when things aren't going well, when you see someone who remains calm, who stays focused on what they need to be focused on and gets the team focused on those highest priority tasks, this is someone that you're like, I'll follow that person anywhere. That is what good leadership actually looks like, and that is what we must strive to do. It's not innate with most of us. We have to train and prepare and think about it so that we're planned and ready for those contingencies when they happen. That's the goal. That's what we should strive for, because that's what good leadership looks like.
100%. Chaos breeds chaos. And if you're a chaotic leader and you're not detached and you're making emotional decisions, the people around you are likely to react in the same way. But calm breeds calm. If we're calm, we're relaxed, we're detached, we're making decisions, we have a likelihood of also helping the people around us detach from their emotions, which helps the broader team win. So the immediate action drill for this episode is to come up with that action plan, to spend some time assessing what are your red flags, identifying what those red flags are, and then put together your action plan. Maybe having a snack isn't on there. Maybe it is, but either way, put together your 3-step action plan of what you're going to do in those moments. Take a breath, take a step back, physically remove yourself from that situation, give yourself a timeout, whatever you need to do, have that action plan ready. So when the next opportunity comes, whether it's a small situation or a big problem, you're prepared to implement that action plan and detach from your emotions, your ego, and your own perspective.
It may simply be giving yourself a 30-second pause before you respond to someone's criticism. That's a huge way to be able to detach and to think about the power of detachment. It may be pulling yourself away from your computer when you get that email that sets you off, that's CC'd all, and you really want to respond in an aggressive way. To go out, take a breath, walk outside, step outside and look at the blue sky and detach and think about what winning looks like. But when you identify the red flags, when you put some contingency plans in place and you practice the power of detachment, when life gives you training opportunities, when it's chaotic, when it's difficult, when you start to feel those emotions welling up, you will improve at the skill. You will be able to detach. That detachment will be a superpower that enables you to lead and win.
Find us on YouTube or wherever you like to listen to podcasts and do all the things you're supposed to do, like, subscribe, share, leave us a review, but most importantly, send us the leadership challenges that you're facing right now so we can target our next episodes to helping you understand how to apply the principles of extreme ownership to solving those challenges.
Check out our free resources at echelonfront.com, or you can take the next step and join the Extreme Ownership Academy, our online training platform, where we go deeper on these principles and teach you how to apply them in your business and in your life.